the ACS Learning Center. In this tutorial, we're going to be servicing the Knight AutoFlow laundry dispenser. First, we start out with our visual inspection. Do we have power on to the unit? Check the remote. Is there any numbers or letters that seem out of place? Check the connections. Are there any breaks, leaks, or chemical buildups? Check your manifold. Breaks, leaks, chemical buildups. We have a concern here. Do we have a chemical leak or broke? Check your product containers. Are the pickup lines in the correct container? Are there any spills or leaks? Here we find a product out. Next, we're going to be checking the squeeze tubes, face plates, and rollers. In the older units, there are no quick connects on the systems. Here we find that one of the face plates is cracked. Cracking face plates is due to being over-tightened. Check your squeeze tubes. Are they soft and pliable? Are your connections good and in great shape? Make sure that you use a silicone-based tube lube. A half-inch bead in a couple of locations is all that's needed. When we're placing the face plate, they don't hold back anything or any kind of pressure. They're basically just a safety device. They only need to be hand snug. Again, checking the squeeze tubes. Are they soft and pliable? Connections are in good shape. We almost forgot to lube the tubes. Lube the inside of the tube that's up next to the rollers. When the pump motors run, they will distribute the tube lube around the squeeze tube and the rollers. Here we got a squeeze tube that's flat. If they're firm or they're hard, replace the squeeze tube. When removing the squeeze tubes on the old systems, take caution of not cutting the tube when you're taking off the zip ties. When you're pulling off the tubes, pinch down at the top of the barb fitting on the check valves and pull it straight up and drain out any chemical that may have been left in the squeeze tube. Put on your old new squeeze tube. Remember, the pickup side goes to the right. The discharge side to the manifold goes to the left. Lubing the tubes increases the lifespan of the squeeze tubes. Always make sure you use zip ties on all connections. When you using tubing, barb fittings, if you don't use zip ties, you have a chance that you're going to end up with a service call due to an air gap or a leak. This squeeze tube feels a little worn, but it is still pliable and soft, so we're going to keep using it. Remember, when you're checking the squeeze tubes, you have to check the tube that comes in contact with the rollers. Just squeezing on a tube outside of the pump body doesn't give you an indication of the life expectancy of the squeeze tube. Next, we're going to be testing the check valves. Put the system into a flush mode. Remove each of the squeeze tubes one at a time off the check valves. Again, when you're removing the squeeze tube, pinch it at the top of the barb. This helps hold back any chemical that's in the squeeze tube and hold it upright. Operate your flush to check to see if there are any leaks. Check valves break, they generally get stuck in an open position. When they get stuck in an open position and you run the flush, it's going to shoot out water. Always put your zip ties back in place. Remember, safety first. When testing your check valves, don't stand in front of the check valve. Depending on the water pressure, it can shoot out a pretty good stream sometimes. Here we got a bad check valve. Again, we had a good indication during our visual inspection with the chemical buildup on the outside of it. Let's go ahead and replace the check valve. Get the check valve ready by using Teflon tape. And in a clockwise direction, put 3 wraps of Teflon around the threads. Threads on check valves are tapered, so it doesn't need a lot. Make sure that you always got a rag handy when you're servicing dispensers. In removing check valves, there is a possibility that you'll have a backflow of water that can come out on you. It all depends on how your flush line is ran to the washer. So always be prepared. Let's put in our new check valve. When you're putting in your new check valves, all you need to do is put it hand snug to start with. From there, you're going to use your tool, and you give it about 1/4 to 1/2 a turn with the tool. Don't over tighten it. Remember, the tapered threads can put pressure on the manifold and crack it. Here we're going to retest the valve to make sure that it is operational. Putting a remote on pump 9 is your flush pump. Operate your flush. You're checking to see if the check valve is holding back water or if there are any leaks around the threads. Replace your squeeze tube and your tie wrap. We'll continue on down the line and finish checking our check valves. Again, we had no tie wrap on this. Remember, we changed the squeeze tube, so we left it off so we can test the check valve. Again, check all check valves that are in use on this system, whether you have a 3, 4, or 5 pump system. Make sure your zip ties are snug so they don't slip off. Next, let's check our product containers. We're checking the chemical labels to make sure they're in place. Your pickup lines and straws are in good shape. And seeing how much product is left in the buckets. Here we got a container that the chemical label has come off. Check each product. Again, make sure your pickup lines and your straws are in good shape. Here in our sour, we noted this in our visual inspection, that the bucket was basically empty. Let's first go ahead and replace our label. Always replace the labels when needed. Labels on the pickup lines helps the customers when you're not there to make sure that the pickup lines go back in the right buckets. Always snip off the ends of your zip ties. Now let's go ahead and replace the bucket for the customer. Let's put a fresh one online. Change over our pickup line into the new bucket. And let's pour up any remainder into the fresh bucket from the old one. Let's marry them up. Any spills, let's make sure we clean them up. Next, we're going to be testing and priming pumps. Press the prime button on the remote, press it down for 3 to 5 seconds. Ask you, do you want to prime the pumps? Use the up arrow button to select yes. Press the enter button to start the pump. Press the enter button to stop it. Use the up and down arrow button to select the desired pump. Again, pressing the start button starts the pump. Pressing the enter button stops it. Test each pump. If the product's not in the line, make sure that you prime it up. Pump 9 is the flush pump. Flush the line anytime you are priming or testing an oxidizer. Oxidizer would be distainer or brightener. Again, flush the line anytime you are priming or testing a sour or sour softener. Don't mix an oxidizer and a sour in the same manifold. Make sure that we flush the system out. For more information on servicing a laundry dispenser, talk to your SSM, manager, regional manager, or contact the training center for more information.